Hey everybody, we're back again for another off-season recap video, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Calgary Flames. Very interesting team to talk about, especially this off-season where they've made quite a few moves and really kind of changed this lineup around a little bit heading into this coming year. So before we fully get into it, I just ask that you please subscribe if you are new and hit that thumbs up button. Both of those things help out so much and are greatly appreciated. But Calgary had a decent year last year. Not as good, I think, as they hoped, but they were still a playoff team, which is obviously always good to see. You want to be in the playoffs, obviously. But then they lost in the first round. They did win the qualifying round against Winnipeg, but then they played Dallas in the first round of the actual playoffs, and they ended up losing to the team that went on to the Stanley Cup Finals to represent the West. So not a lot of shame there, but what we saw was that they actually looked like they were, probably had a good shot at winning that series until Matthew Tkachuk got hurt. And then once he went down in that series, that was the end of it, and it was all Dallas from there on out. So definitely look at Matthew Tkachuk as kind of the heartbeat of this team and someone that they really rely on to be a top guy for them and really lead the way, which, given the level of player that he is and also the other intangibles to the game that he brings with the physicality and just the getting under the opponent's skin, the willingness to drop the gloves. Matthew Tkachuk, this team goes or falls with Matthew Tkachuk. And when he went down in the playoffs last year, that really, really hurt them. But let's take a look at what they've done this offseason because, like I said, they've made some serious moves this offseason in Calgary. We look at some additions. Obviously, the biggest one is in goal. Jacob Markstrom coming in from the Vancouver Canucks. Had an extremely good season last year, and he signs a long-term deal, 6 years with the Flames. They're going to need him to really be a big-time goalie for them. And if he can do that, that is great news for Calgary going forward. They also brought in Chris Tanev from the Vancouver Canucks in free agency. Good middle pair defenseman, veteran guy, 30 years old. He really helps to replace the loss of some of the other guys that they've lost on the back end that we'll get into in a minute. Joachim Nordstrom comes in from the Bruins as a depth forward. Dominic Simone in from Pittsburgh. And Josh Lavo in from also Vancouver. A lot of Vancouver Canucks making the way over to Calgary here this offseason. And Nordstrom, Simone, and Lavo are all kind of depth forwards who will play in the bottom six. And then they have a wild card, and Nikita Nesterov, who, if you remember, played with the Tampa Bay Lightning early in his career, made a stop in Montreal, but really wasn't cutting it at the NHL level. He went back to the KHL for the last 3 years, and now he is trying to make an NHL return at 27 years old. And this is a really interesting move because Nesterov, I think, is a complete wild card heading into training camp, and he has the chance to be, maybe a surprisingly good pickup, coming back over from the KHL and getting a second NHL chance here. And maybe could be good enough to crack this lineup as a 5-6 type guy if he has a good training camp. Or it could just not work out at all and he could end up getting waived or sent to the AHL or just straight up cut, whatever way they go about it. But either way, it's going to be interesting to see what Nesterov's able to do in a Flames uniform, getting this second chance at the NHL. And he could end up being a surprisingly good pickup for them if things go well. Or, it's certainly low risk. There's no risk here for Calgary. Or he just won't work out and it'll be back to Russia. But Nesterov's a guy to watch, certainly through training camp in the early part of this season if he does make the team, to see what he could bring to this lineup. And then switching over to subtractions now, the biggest one is TJ Brody, going to the Toronto Maple Leafs. He's a big loss out of this lineup for sure. He's been a top pair guy for them along with Mark Giordano for a number of years. They also lost Travis Hamonic, Eric Gustafsson, and Derek Forbort off of that defense core as well. So that is 4 D-men from their top 7 at the end of last season who are no longer with the team. So a real upheaval on the back end. And, a lot of changes there with the Flames defense. Tobias Reeder, depth forward, also leaves. He goes to Buffalo. Cam Talbot, obviously no need to keep Talbot with Markstrom coming in, so Talbot goes to the Minnesota Wild. And depth forward, Mark Jankowski, now a member of the Pittsburgh Penguins, not re-signed. So, quite a few roster changes here with the Calgary Flames. Total upheaval on the back end. New goaltender in Jacob Markstrom and some new depth forwards as well. So really, really interesting offseason for Calgary, and we'll see which way it goes for them. So which way is it going to go for the Calgary Flames? This is a team that I think could be better next season than they were last year, or could really fall off and really struggle. And I think it's really tough to tell which way it's actually going to go. A lot is going to depend on Jacob Markstrom. If Jacob Markstrom plays like he did last year with Vancouver and has another high-end NHL season, then I think the Calgary Flames will actually be a better team with him in goal than what they had with Cam Talbot and David Rittich as the duo, and Markstrom could really take over and propel this team up the standings. On the other side, you have the chance that Jacob Markstrom just had a really good season last year and isn't going to be able to replicate that. And if that's the case, they could be in some trouble because they gave him a big contract at $6 million per season for 6 years. And Jacob Markstrom, really what he did last year was his clear best NHL season, and he had never really reached that level before. So it kind of is a question. Is he going to be able to replicate that and do it again? Is what we saw last year the goaltender that Jacob Markstrom has developed into, or was that just one good season and he gonna fall back a little bit? And if that's the case, that could be an issue for the Flames. So that's something certainly to watch. And another issue I have with this team that they really didn't overly address was secondary scoring. This is a team that is way too reliant on their big four, Johnny Gaudreau, Sean Monahan, Elias Lindholm, and Matthew Tkachuk. Their big four do a lot of the scoring for the Calgary Flames. When you get down to their third and fourth lines, there's really not a whole lot of offensive production there. Now, they did make some depth moves, bringing in Nordstrom, bringing in Simone, and letting go of guys like Reeder and Jankowski, but those, Simone probably out of all the guys they brought in offensively, Levo as well, probably the most offensive and have some most offensive upside, but those guys aren't big scorers either. So I wonder if they're going to be able to get enough offense out of their second, third, and fourth lines to really help out that big four enough to put the puck in the net offensively enough to compete and go deeper into the playoffs than what they have in the past. So that's kind of a question for me. The defense is, they're going to be relying heavily on, Rasmus Andersson to take over kind of as a top pair guy now. They certainly need Vilimäki to come back. He missed all of last season with an ACL injury. They need him to come back and play a role on that D-core. They need Oliver Shillington to kind of take that next step. So there's a lot of changes on the back end. There's a big change in goal. I question the secondary scoring. This is a team that really could go either way, and they're going to be playing in the All-Canadian division, which is going to be a very, very tough division this coming year. We know that they're going to be better than Ottawa. They're probably going to be better than Winnipeg. But where do they match up against a team like Montreal? Where do they match up against a team like Toronto? How are they going to fare against teams like Vancouver and Edmonton? There's still a lot of questions here with Calgary, and with what they've done this offseason, I think it's a very hit or miss offseason. If these moves work out, Tanev and Markstrom and bringing these guys in really works out, then they have a chance to finish top 3, I think, in that Canadian division. If they don't work out, they're going to be finishing bottom 3 in that Canadian division and not going to the playoffs. So it's going to be a big year for Calgary. It's going to be interesting to see what happens and which way that they go. I think it really could go either way. They could end up having a really good year, or they could just fall flat on their faces, and it's totally going to depend on how they play and whether their top guys are top guys, whether their D-core can hold it together, and how their goaltending is. So very unsure of what to think of the Calgary Flames heading into this season. I think they're really a wild card, and they could be all over the place in the standings, and they could have a very good year or a very not so good year. But we'll see what happens this coming year in 2020, 2021. With that, like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. All those links are down in the description. If you'd like to further support the channel, the links to our Patreon, merchandise store, and donation link are down in the description as well. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.